All right, it's Zoom Patrol time once again. Chris Mosier here with Austin City Limits Radio. This time being joined by Karen Ramus. Karen, did I get your name right? Karen
You
Ramus.
got it right. Yeah, you did.
Executive Director, National Alliance on Mental Illness, otherwise known as NAMI, N-A-M-I, which
That's
is
correct.
more familiar. We see that name in community efforts around town from time to time. This is part of a series of conversations that the folks at OK to Say have been helpful in orchestrating. Talk about your involvement with them and their mission and your thoughts there.
Yeah, we love the work that OK to Say does because largely it so much aligns with the work that we're doing as well. We talk a lot about how do we change the mental health conversation in our community, and that's really what OK to Say has always been about, which is the most important thing that we need to do around changing the conversation is to make it okay to talk about it. We know that one of the places where we can get into some danger is when we're isolating, not talking about what's going on, feeling some of the shame from that. And so we love the work that they've done. We've partnered with them before on events where we've done storytelling, which I'm a big believer in that and the power of sharing our stories. And that's one of the reasons I do the work that I do is I actually almost lost my own daughter to suicide about 9 years ago. And that's how I got involved with this work, because I know one of the things that moved her to that place of crisis was feeling like she couldn't talk about it and feeling like she'd done everything that she could and she still wasn't better. And so from a very passionate place, I firmly believe that we've got to make it okay to say, I'm not okay today and I need some help.
Right. And here we are. This is what we're 10, 11 weeks into this pandemic situation.
Yeah.
And I think one of the unique aspects of this entire experience, at least for me, has been kind of you're obviously missing people. You know, it's one thing to be kind of, when you're quarantined, obviously you're separated from other people, but there are other kind of deeper effects to a prolonged denial of human contact, aren't there? That's bound to be something relatively new.
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting. One of the things that we've been talking about is how important it is for us to shift the language and to really start talking about physical distancing. Because we are social beings. We need the social engagement and interaction. And so when we talk about social distancing, I think it sends that message that we need to, isolate ourselves, block ourselves off. So I think changing the language is really important. And then recognizing that we need the interaction and the engagement as much as possible. So whether that's using technology, and we're encouraging people to do that, with our own online programming, but also encouraging people to use the technology to stay connected, and then getting creative and innovative. My daughter's actually about to head out to the park to see two of her college friends that she hasn't seen in a while, and they're each packing their own lunch, and they're going to socially distance and wear their masks and stuff, but they need to see each other. They need to be able to sit and share stories and talk about what they've been going through, and we all need that. And so we know that isolation can play a big part in exacerbating all of our mental health issues, and that's everyone. And I think that's really interesting, Chris, for us to recognize that during this time, the impact of this pandemic, we don't really know yet, but I think we do sense that we're going to see a wave of more mental health issues than we ever have been before, because we do know that it's impacting people's ability to engage with one another. We're all living in this sense of uncertainty and fear and grief. And so if we don't have a safe space in which to talk about that, and then also develop some good coping skills for addressing it, we can get into a pretty serious situation pretty quickly.
You talked before we started rolling, and you alluded right now to kind of an uptick in people engaging in telehealth, sort of using technology to make this connection when it's really so badly needed. There's bound to be a lot of people who are using that new kind of means of getting help and getting a conversation started. Bound to be a lot of new people for this, perhaps people who have not reached out to someone for help prior to this in their lives.
Yeah, I think that you're seeing that. And I think we're really excited because we're doing a lot of workplace presentations now virtually. And we're seeing a lot of workplaces really encourage folks to tap into their EAP and to recognize that they do have access to telehealth. And interestingly enough, I think in the past, there was a great deal of concern about how would that work? Would that really be effective? I mean, if we're social beings and, the power of being in a room with someone, are you going to lose some of that? But it's been really interesting for us to hear back from folks that are having experiences of teletherapy and telehealth, and they're reporting back that they're having good experiences. And I think during this time when there is so much uncertainty and fear, and that we're sort of limiting how much we're getting out there, it's really nice to sit up in your bedroom, in your PJs if you want, and to talk to your therapist, in the safety of your own home, so we're hearing lots of good and positive feedback, and I think we are seeing more people engage in it. I think there's a certain level of comfort in it. I really think that it's going to greatly impact actually the way we deliver programming, therapy, health in the future. There are things that we are doing today that are going to stick with us, that we're going to continue to do. I think we're seeing that with our own organization, who by and large, we've always done things in person. And now that we're seeing how many more folks are able to impact our online programming, we're definitely going to keep an element of that way past when this pandemic has ended.
Very good. And I think, we were all kind of fortunate that technology like this, Zoom and FaceTime, all this stuff was kind of already sitting there, almost kind of waiting for this sort of situation to come up, and largely have been really, really, a great utility in that situation. It's only going to get better and only more interactive and more accessible, I would think.
I think so. I mean, yeah. I think so. I think it's been interesting, even just little things like our team has been learning how to use breakout rooms, right, in Zoom. And when they first told me that, I was like, really, you can do that? And the power then of getting a small group of people together, in a room, 3 or 4, it creates that opportunity to have a little more intimacy that you wouldn't expect to be able to do using the technology, but it's happening.
Well, these conversations with OK to Say have been designed for people who maybe are struggling a bit and are beginning to consider that they might be, a candidate for reaching out for a little bit of extra help. And I would almost say that just about anybody who's having that sort of a struggle, it is OK to say. It's just for anybody.
Yeah.
Maybe address that person briefly. Someone who's watching this, who is looking for comfort and has just not quite gone there. Talk to that person briefly.
Yeah, and I think what I would say to them is this. Look, I think it's really important that we recognize that while we call it mental health, the truth of the matter is that it's brain health. It's in our body. This is a health issue. And like anything else, I know I've been impacted by the fact that I'm not getting out as much as I used to, and I can feel it in my body. And so I'm having to make sure that I'm intentional about getting more exercise and moving more. And so it's the same thing. Like, I start to feel it physically, and the same is true with what we're all navigating right now. I think in the past, there's been a great deal of shame about asking for help, especially I think in the state of Texas, where we're very much, pull yourself up by those bootstraps, right? Because we got this. And I think there's something really powerful about understanding that there is great courage in being able to say, hey, you know what? I need help, and that it's okay to do that is really important for us to recognize that none of us are immune from mental health, that it really is on this spectrum. And sometimes we can be really, really well and, feel super positive and be able to handle the stresses of everyday life pretty well. And then things happen and we can be on this continuum. And I think once we begin to recognize that we're really kind of in a funk that's lasted 2 or 3 or 4 more days, that is the time when we need to be paying attention and saying, hey, if the exercise isn't cutting it, or sitting and doing a meditation app, or breathing, or any of the things that ordinarily help us, dancing in the kitchen with our husband or whatever it is, then that's a time when we might want to seek some additional help. And I am this big believer in the power of therapy and just creating that space, not only to be really vulnerable and authentic about what's bothering you, but also having someone who's listening, who can give you some ideas and coping skills for how to address that in a more positive way. I don't think there's any better time than now. I think that we are becoming a community, because of the current situation that we're in, that is becoming a lot more comfortable talking about mental health. I'm seeing conversations happen that I would have never imagined are happening, whether it's online or in person. And I think we're there. So join us. I'm actually got a therapy session set for next week. So I know for myself, I'm having my own experience of some anxiety and feeling kind of in a funk on some days. And that's just human. We're dealing with a lot of stress right now. And it's much better to address that early on than to just wait and wait. You would never fall down, break your arm, and just put a an ACE bandage on it and hope that it gets better. But I feel like a lot of times that's what we do with our mental health. We just say, oh, I feel it, I'm feeling it, but I'll be okay. And so it's time to do away with the ACE bandages, do what you got to do to take good care of yourself.
It's never been easier to do that. We're at a moment also where, in spite of all the stresses, the news cycle is crazy. Even outside of the coronavirus situation, there's just a lot of apprehension and anxiety-inducing stuff going on right now. I've gotten in my head where I'm thinking, this is almost kind of a reset. It's a topsy-turvy kind of, it's a pivoting point. We're in a state of flux at the moment, but we're given great opportunities, just like the ones we've been talking about, to kind of fix things maybe that we weren't doing so great before this, and there's going to be a lot of those sort of opportunities, I think. Karen Ramus is the Executive Director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI of Central Texas. How do we reach you at that organization?
You can reach us at our website, so NAMIcentraltx.org, or give us a call at 512-480-9810. And we're working, all of us are working remotely, so you can reach out to us. Give us a call, send us an email at info@NAMIcentraltx.org. We have some great resources on our website, though, Chris, that talk about our online programming. So that's classes, support groups. We're doing webinars on a regular basis, and those recordings are on our website. We bring in all kinds of great professionals to talk about all kinds of coping skills. Next week at 11 o'clock on Thursday, we've got someone that's going to come in and talk about some of the challenges that we're concerned with addiction right now, as we're sort of in this mode where we're seeing the increases of alcohol use because of the current pandemic. And again, that's another one of those things we want to address. So we bring in professionals to talk about topics like that, and then to talk about some of the things that we can actively and concretely do to address some of those concerns. So come and join us for some of those.
Great. Karen, thank you so much. Thanks to OK to Say once again for hooking Karen and I up, and have a great weekend. Great meeting you.
Thank you. You too, Chris. Bye-bye.